All right. Hello, everybody. Group 4, Sam and Jessica back at it again for the final discussion scenario. Our scenario was examine the case San Antonio Independent School District versus Rodriguez, and then discuss the main points of emphasis of the case. And then we did a little research on strategies used by plaintiffs who challenged state funding formulas since the Rodriguez case. So, I'll just switch the slide, I guess, if I can. The Rodriguez case was a 1973 Supreme Court case. It was a class action lawsuit, meaning a lot of different people were involved, brought by parents whose children attended a public school in a low-income area around San Antonio.
The plaintiffs argued that the financing system for Texas public schools, reliant on local property taxes, was disadvantageous for poorer districts, and therefore disparities were created due to wealth or lack thereof between school districts.
Right, so the plaintiffs argued that these disparities based on the wealth of the district or lack of wealth violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, which the Supreme Court ruled, no, it didn't, 5-4 in favor of the school district, that it did not violate the 14th Amendment.
So part of the ruling, I guess, and kind of their main reason was that education is not a fundamental right under the United States Constitution. Obviously very important, but not a fundamental right under the Constitution.
Right. So since it's not listed in the Constitution, they ruled that it can't be unconstitutional because it's not in the Constitution. So basically what the Rodriguez case did was it took school finance systems out of the federal court's hands. It made it more of a local state court issue. Basically, states decide on their own. Each local state will decide how the education system works in their state, which is kind of how it should have been from the beginning, according to the Constitution, according to the founding fathers.
Right.
Right. Do you have anything else to add there?
Nope, I think that pretty much covers the case.
I think so. So then we're researching strategies that other plaintiffs have used to challenge the Rodriguez decision. And the strategies that I found were a lot of the same stuff. Basically, what plaintiffs would do is they would attack, or not attack, they would challenge the state constitutions where education is listed as a right in the state constitution. So a couple of the cases that I researched, which kind of follow the same format and the same theme, Edgewood Independent School District versus Kirby, where the plaintiffs argued that school funding through property tax in Texas violated the Texas state constitution's efficient system of education clause, and the Texas Supreme Court ruled in favor of Kirby, declaring that the finance system was unconstitutional at the state level, where they had to look at and readjust. And I think they had a deadline and timeline of when they got to figure out how they're going to change it. Then I researched Abbott versus Burke, which is the same thing pretty much, only in New Jersey. Rose versus the Council for Better Education, same thing in Kentucky. Roosevelt Elementary School District versus Bishop was the same thing in Arizona. And then Fannin versus State recently kind of was the same thing in Kansas. So all the cases that I saw were same formula, where the school district was funded by local property taxes, excuse me, and the plaintiffs argued that that's not fair. Some districts are wealthier, some are poorer, so the wealthier districts obviously have higher per pupil spendings. So it's kind of the same format that I found, which, it's all listed right here. But Jessica, I think, found
Right.
more interesting.
So I guess in my research, I just found some different strategies that are being used. One is kind of talking about adequate versus equal education. Kind of talk about how they may not be equal, but are the districts that have lesser funding, are they still able to provide an adequate education? It may not be, the greatest education and equal to all other districts, but is it at least adequate? So that's one strategy that's been used when state funding formulas are challenged. I saw that there's an increased use of expert witnesses. and them using school finance studies and quantitative data, talking about test scores and graduation rates by the plaintiffs. An example of that was the Campaign for Fiscal Equity versus the state of New York. The plaintiffs used extensive evidence to argue that New York City students were being denied the opportunity to receive a sound basic education. Which, kind of brings you back to the whole adequate versus equal. It may not be the best education, but is it a basic and adequate education? And they were saying it was not. And then in some successful cases, the plaintiffs are asking for continued oversight. So even after the case is over, they're asking the court to continue their oversight to ensure compliance of what the ruling was. For example, Abbott versus Burke, the New Jersey Supreme Court issued multiple rulings over decades to ensure that legislature followed through with funding and reform mandates.
Mm-hmm. So kind of a lot of the same stuff where nationally or federally, they're not going to touch it because it's not in the Constitution. But state-wise, several states, I'm not sure exactly how many, I didn't find that in my research, have education listed as a fundamental right so that it is unconstitutional to create disparities in the funding through taxes. And so
right.
that's kind of what
Yeah, and I don't remember the numbers either in my research, but it seemed like that almost all states there has been a case of some sort related to school funding. The only, interestingly enough, from our chapter, the only state that I for sure remember that hasn't is Hawaii, because they actually, their education is all one district in the state and it's all state funded, so there's no local funding at all. So
Right. That would be it would be cool to go to school in Hawaii as a kid.
yeah,
It'd be interesting. It's interesting to think about there's only one school district throughout the entire state.
right.
Just kind of interesting. It's not at all how it works here. So
Yeah. Anywhere else pretty much in the United States.
So kind of interesting, the education not a federal issue anymore. It's especially kind of what's going on now. It's all with the states and the local governments.
Yep.
So that's really all I have for the discussion. Is there
Yep,
anything else you'd like to add?
that's all I have too. I don't really have anything else to add.
All right. Well, group 4 with our final discussion recording. Bye.
Right.